My son said, "She won't even know it's gone," and laughed with his wife as they stole from me. That's how it started. That's the sentence that split something open inside me. And if you're wondering what I did next, well, I saw everything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I watched them steal from me like I was already gone. And that was their mistake. They say a mother always knows. But no one tells you what it feels like when your knowing becomes a curse. I always believed my son had goodness in him, buried, maybe, beneath years of indulgence and convenience, but there nonetheless. Now I see I was only ever seeing the child I wanted him to be, not the man he became. I hadn't meant to go to the bank that day. The weather was gray, the kind of gray that settles into your bones, and the ache in my knee was warning me to stay home. But something urged me out. I bundled into my coat and made my way downtown. I wanted to wire a bit of money to my friend Margaret's grandson. Talented boy. Worth helping. The bank lobby was quiet. I stepped through the doors, pulled off my gloves, and that's when I saw them. My son, David, and his wife, Leanne. They stood at the far counter, grinning. David had my financial binder in his hands. Leanne was laughing her high-pitched, fake laugh that always made me feel like she was trying too hard to sound important. Her nails were red, her coat expensive, and her eyes locked onto that teller's screen like a predator watching its prey. I stopped. My heart didn't race, it hardened. I backed away and sat behind a fake plant, pretending to look through my bag. They didn't see me. They never saw me. Leanne pointed at the screen. There it is. Just like you said. My stomach turned. Her voice, full of glee, was like ice water down my spine. She sounded proud. Proud to be helping herself to my life savings. Proud to be gutting me without a second thought. David hesitated. He looked around, nervous. Like he knew it was wrong. Like he knew what it meant to hold that binder. What if she finds out? He whispered. That question hit me hard. He still called me she. Like I wasn't even a person. Like I was a problem to be avoided, not a mother to be respected. Leanne rolled her eyes. She won't. She's not paying attention. She thinks you're still her baby boy. Every word she said was a stab. Each one left a bruise I could feel in my chest. She. Not your mom. Not your mother. Just she. Like I was some burden. Some old woman who existed to fund their life. The way she said it, so certain, so cold, it made me feel invisible, like a relic gathering dust. I wanted to stand up, but I didn't. I stayed and listened. My fingers clenched around the strap of my purse. I felt heat rising behind my eyes, but I blinked it back. I wouldn't give them that. David laughed. He laughed. It wasn't a big laugh. Just a chuckle. But it made my cheeks burn. He laughed at me. I remembered sitting by his bed through fevers. Staying up nights while he studied. Skipping meals so he could go on class trips. I remembered every ride to practice. Every little note I packed in his lunch. And now he was laughing. The teller asked for ID. David gave them a copy. A copy of my ID. My signature, my name, things I never gave him. His hand shook. But he still did it. Leanne patted his arm. It's fine. They never check too hard with seniors. I'm not just a senior. I'm not a category. I'm a person. A mother. A woman who gave everything. Her words made me feel erased. And then David said it. She won't even know until it's gone. And by then, we'll have it moved. She'll think she lost it to a scam. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just sat there. Sat there and listened to my own son say that I would think I was too old to remember what I had. He knew me well enough to exploit me, but not well enough to know I was watching. I waited. I watched them smile and leave, Leanne swinging her purse like it was filled with treasure. When they were gone, I stood up. My knees ached, but my spine was straight. The teller greeted me. I gave him my ID. My real one. I'd like to review all account activity from the past hour. He looked confused. Then shocked. Then panicked. The manager came out. They apologized. I asked them not to call anyone, not yet. I had my own plans. What did I feel? Not just betrayal. I felt used. Erased. Like all the years I'd sacrificed had been poured into a hole. They didn't see me. They saw what they wanted from me. And once they got it, they didn't look back. David didn't flinch when he handed over forged documents. Leanne didn't pause when she insulted me. She called me old, slow, clueless. She acted like I was weak, like I didn't know how to log into my bank. She called me forgetful once over dinner, laughed when I paused before remembering a name. I remembered that moment now. How David just sipped his drink and didn't say a word. She laughed like my life savings were a joke. Like the money I worked for was just some bonus prize she'd won for marrying my son. He stood beside her, letting her talk that way about me. Letting her do what he should have stopped. What he should have never started. I remembered the birthday dinner they skipped last year. Said they were busy. I'd made roast chicken, his favorite. Sat at the table alone. I remembered the time I asked if they needed help with a down payment, and Leanne smirked. We're not looking to live anywhere boring. As if my home, the one I'd built with his father, was something to scoff at. That smirk stayed with me. It joined all the other little slights. The times they didn't visit. The holidays where I was too much trouble. The gifts they regifted. The messages left unread. I walked out of that bank with quiet fury. By the time they celebrated their success, I had already called my lawyer. Changed everything. Moved what they hadn't touched. They thought they won. But they don't even know what they've set in motion. This isn't about money. It's about being seen. Being respected. And for the first time in years, I'm finally going to make sure they see me. Not the way they expect, but the way they deserve. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums inside your ears, that keeps you from turning off your thoughts. I lay there on the couch because I didn't want to go into the bedroom. That room was filled with too many reminders, old photos on the dresser, the wool sweater I hadn't worn since my last trip to the mountains, the worn slippers by the bed that David once bought me on Mother's Day. When gifts still meant something. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the scene over and over again. Leanne's voice, smug and light. There it is. Just like you said. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Like she was proud. Like she was entitled to it. Like the money was a reward she was finally claiming after all these years of tolerating me. And David's laugh, his small, cowardly chuckle. That one hurt the most. He didn't just allow it. He joined in. My son, the boy I had held in my arms after his first heartbreak, the one I'd driven to college with a trunk full of folded laundry and secondhand textbooks. He used to call me every Sunday. When Leanne first came around, those calls started getting shorter. Then they came every other week. Then only on birthdays. Then not at all unless I called first. I should have seen it. I should have heard it in his tone, the way his voice always sounded like it had one foot out the door. She never liked me. That much was always clear. From the first dinner when she smiled too much and talked over me, I knew. When I gave them a handmade quilt for their wedding and she said, "Oh, how nostalgic," like she was trying not to call it ugly. When she made jokes about my cooking being too old-fashioned. When she bought David designer clothes and said, "We've got to modernize you, babe," while giving me a look like I was the past dragging him down. But I never thought she'd take him with her. Not completely. Every visit became shorter. Every holiday more awkward. They started bringing their own dishes to Thanksgiving. Vegan stuffing. Gluten-free pie. "We're trying something new," Leanne said, while pushing my apple cobbler to the side like it was unclean. I told myself it didn't matter. That what mattered was David showing up. But even that stopped. I used to write them little notes when I sent over birthday checks. Just a line or two. "Hope you're both doing well. Let's talk soon." I never got a response. Not once. But the checks were always cashed right away. The resentment had been growing for years, but I'd kept it quiet. I told myself I was imagining things. That families go through phases. That I shouldn't hold grudges. But that day in the bank? That wasn't a phase. That was truth. Plain and ugly. They saw me as an obstacle. A resource. Something to manage. And when David said, "She won't even know until it's gone," what he really meant was, I don't think she matters enough to fight back. I spent the early hours of the morning sitting at the kitchen table with a pen and a notebook. I started writing it all down, every time they brushed me off, every time they minimized me, every little moment that stung and kept stinging. Like the time I offered to host their baby shower and Leon said, "We're going for a more curated vibe." Like I was a cluttered room they didn't want guests to see. Like the time they visited and Leon brought her own towels and said, "I just have sensitive skin," while wrinkling her nose at my linen closet. Like the time I told David I was thinking of joining a local book club and he said, "That's cute, Mom." Cute. I underlined that word 3 times. They didn't see me as a person anymore. I was a mascot. A minor inconvenience with a checking account. And worst of all, I let them. I let every little thing slide. I bit my tongue so many times, I forgot what it felt like to speak up. That morning, as the sky turned blue outside my window, I made myself a cup of tea. The same kind I'd brewed for David every time he had a cold as a boy. And I sat there, hands wrapped around the mug, wondering when exactly I'd disappeared. I thought of the photos in my hallway. The ones from David's graduation, his wedding, the family reunion. In all of them, I'm standing off to the side, smiling just enough. Not in the center. Not even close. Like I had already started fading. I thought of the times I said, "I'm so proud of you," and got back a distracted, "Thanks." The times I drove across the city just to drop off Soup when he was sick, only to find out they'd ordered takeout instead. I thought of how they called when they needed things. When their roof leaked. When the car broke down. When Leanne's boutique business failed and she needed a loan to rebrand. I always helped. Every time. Because that's what mothers do. That's what I told myself. But what about what daughters do? What about what sons should do? I gave them everything. My time, my care, my trust. And they took it like it was owed. Like I was lucky to be included at all. The notebook on the table now held 5 pages of memories. Not happy ones. The kind you only admit to yourself when you finally stop lying. The kind that make you sit a little straighter and see the world a little clearer. I wrote until my hand cramped. I didn't want to stop. Each sentence gave shape to things I had been afraid to name. Each memory gave me back a piece of myself. Like the time Leon rolled her eyes when I suggested we spend a weekend together. "That's sweet, but we're just really busy right now," she said. As if I'd asked her for a loan. Or when I showed them a scrapbook I'd made of David's childhood photos. She scrolled through her phone instead, then said, "Oh, I've seen these on Facebook." I remembered how David never stood up for me. Never once said, "Mom worked hard on that." Never once said, "We should listen to her." He let the distance grow, year by year. And now it made sense. He needed me to be far away so he could do what he did without guilt. That realization hit like a wave. This hadn't happened suddenly. This betrayal was the final step in a long walk they had taken away from me. And I had kept holding the door open, thinking they'd turn around. But they hadn't. By noon, I'd made a decision. Not just to change my accounts, or my lawyer, or my address. But to change my story. They wanted me to believe I was fading. That I was just a tired old woman who wouldn't notice what was being taken from her. But I was awake now. And I would never let them write the ending. Not this time. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and started taking down the pictures. One by one. I left the nails in the wall. Let them stay empty. Let the absence speak louder than the frames ever did. Then I called Margaret. Told her I might be leaving town soon. Maybe for good. She didn't ask questions. Just said, "Good. It's about time." The resentment didn't feel like rage anymore. It felt like clarity. It felt like standing in the sunlight after years of cold. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. All I had to do was walk away and this time, not look back. They had taken their last thing from me. And I had just taken myself back. It started with a cup of coffee. The morning after I took down the pictures, I stood at the kitchen counter watching the steam rise from my mug. The light outside was soft. The kind that makes everything look a little too quiet. I didn't feel peace. Not yet. What I felt was something heavier, a quiet weight pressing against my ribs, a mix of grief and something colder. Resentment, yes. But underneath that, disappointment. Not in them. Not anymore. In myself, for waiting so long to see the truth. I sat down at the table. No television. No background noise. Just me and my thoughts, and the notebook I'd filled with all the ways I'd been erased. That was the word I kept circling back to. Erased. I had spent decades being the helper. The backup. The one who didn't need thanks because you're just that kind of person. I let that title wrap around me like a coat, but it was heavy. It wore me down year by year. And when they finally took from me, truly, shamelessly took, I realized they didn't think I would stop them. They thought I couldn't. That morning, I made 3 calls. First, to my lawyer. We'd spoken briefly the day before, but now I asked for specifics. I wanted everything locked. I wanted my accounts changed. I wanted my assets protected. Second, to my financial advisor. I told him to freeze all co-linked accounts, pull my remaining savings into a private trust, and flag any activity linked to David or Leanne. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. He heard the resolve in my voice. Third, to the airline. I booked a one-way ticket. Portugal. I'd never been, but I had a friend who moved there 10 years ago. Said it was peaceful. Warm. Full of light. And that's what I wanted, light. I stood in the hallway after those calls and stared at the spot where David's wedding photo used to hang. I hadn't taken it down in anger. I'd taken it down because I finally understood that the smile I wore in that picture wasn't real. It was the smile of someone trying to belong in a room where she was only tolerated. I went to the closet and pulled out the suitcase I hadn't used since my last trip. I packed slowly. Not with sadness. With intention. One dress. My favorite scarf. Photos of my husband. My journal. A small box of keepsakes from the years before David started pulling away. I left out anything connected to them. That evening, the phone rang. David. I stared at the screen. My heart didn't jump. My hands didn't shake. I answered with a flat hello. Hey, Mom. His voice had that usual breezy tone, like everything was normal. We were thinking of stopping by this weekend. Leanne found a great little brunch place near your place. My eyebrows lifted. That's how he was going to do it? Pretend like the bank never happened? Like I hadn't seen it all with my own eyes? I'm not going to be here, I said. A pause. Oh? Where are you going? I didn't answer. He tried again. Well, we were hoping to talk. Just check in. You've seemed kind of distant. Kind of distant. The words made me want to laugh. Not because they were funny, but because of how easy they made it sound. As if I had just drifted a little, like a balloon on a breeze. Not because he'd cut the string years ago. I didn't reply. I let the silence speak. Eventually, he mumbled something about calling later. I hung up. After that, I unplugged the landline. It was raining that night. A soft, steady rain. I sat by the window, watching the drops trail down the glass. It felt like a kind of cleansing. Like the sky understood something needed to be washed away. Then something caught me off guard. A memory. One I hadn't thought about in years. I was 16, standing in our kitchen. My father had just told me I wouldn't be allowed to go to college. It's too much for a girl, he'd said. You'll just get married anyway. Those words stayed buried deep in me for decades. That quiet dismissal. That belief that my dreams were too big, too inconvenient. Now here I was, 75, hearing echoes of that same dismissal in my son's voice. You've seemed kind of distant. It was the same thing, really. The same assumption that I didn't need a voice. That I didn't need to be seen. I could have yelled. I could have told David what I saw. What I knew. But I didn't. Not because I was afraid. But because I knew it wouldn't matter. Not to him. I chose silence. Not out of weakness, but because it was the only space left where my dignity could live. I thought about all the times I had shown up for David. The missed sleep, the skipped meals, the quiet sacrifices. I thought about how easily he handed my life over to Leanne's plan. I remembered every little dig she'd made. Every time she corrected me. Every time she laughed at my suggestions. Every time she turned family dinners into showcases for her new diet or her latest investment idea. And I remembered David watching. Always watching, never stopping her. Never saying, Mom matters. That hurt more than anything. I remembered paying for David's first car, even when I had to dip into my savings. When I visited last year and saw that car gone, replaced with something newer, flashier, he didn't even mention it. Not a word of thanks. Not a nod to what I had done. And when Leon redecorated their house and moved the family photos into a storage box, David said, "We're trying a cleaner look." As if the memories I gave them were clutter. So I wrote a letter. Not to them. To myself. I wrote down what I'd learned. That love without respect is not love. That kindness without boundaries is not strength, it's silence. That I had been loyal to people who saw my value in what I could give, not in who I was. And then I signed it. Folded it. Put it in my suitcase. The next morning, I walked to the mailbox and dropped off keys to my neighbor. I left a short note thanking her for her friendship, for always checking on me during the winters, for making sure I never felt alone. I didn't explain. She didn't need to know. This wasn't goodbye to her. It was goodbye to the version of me who waited for people to care. When I got back, I opened my laptop. I logged into the last joint account David had access to and closed it. I removed my name from their emergency contact forms. I updated my medical power of attorney. Then I opened the group text David had created 2 Christmases ago for family updates and typed just 2 words. "I'm done." I didn't wait for the responses. I turned off the phone, packed it in my suitcase, and zipped it closed. I walked through the apartment one last time. Touched the banister. The edge of the kitchen counter. The windowsill where I'd grown herbs in the spring. I felt no tears. Only quiet. I had tried. For years. But now I was finished trying to earn love that should have come freely. And I was done being the scaffolding holding up everyone else's world. Let them feel the weight. I stepped into the hallway, locked the door behind me, and walked away. Into the rain. Into the silence. Into whatever came next. I didn't expect the silence to follow me. But it did. Portugal was warmer than I'd imagined, softer somehow. The mornings carried a kind of golden hush that reminded me of spring back home, before the family started drifting. The air smelled like sea salt and baked bread. People smiled when they passed. I should have felt free. But what I felt was unfinished. The weight of what I had done, the calls, the message, the departure, it clung to me like steam in a bathroom. I waited for the storm. For the fury. For the flood of messages that would try to pull me back. But for a while, there was nothing. Then it started. An email from David. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you doing this?" Doing this. Like I had slammed a door in his face without warning. Like I hadn't been knocking softly for years. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message. Longer. This time, a mix of concern and confusion. "You left us. You didn't even say goodbye. Leanne's hurt. We don't understand. Leanne's hurt." The words burned. The woman who looked through me at every family dinner. Who rolled her eyes when I gave birthday gifts. Who dismissed my stories like they were a waste of breath. She was hurt. I didn't write back. I sat at a cafe that morning with the email open and my finger hovering over the reply button. But there was nothing I could say that they hadn't already chosen not to hear. That week, I got a message from my niece. Not close family. A quieter voice in the margins of the gatherings. She wrote, "I heard what happened. I just wanted you to know I always noticed how much you did for everyone. It meant a lot to me." That message undid me. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. But it saw me. It made me realize how starved I had been for acknowledgement. For someone to say, "I saw you trying." And right behind that thought came another. I had been trying so long to keep everything intact, I didn't notice when I became the thing they leaned on too hard. The storm finally came the following Sunday. Not through words. Through absence. It was David's birthday. I always called. Every year. No matter what. Even when they forgot mine. But this year, I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't send a card. And in return, I received silence. No messages. No check-in. No questions. I wasn't angry. I was hollow. As if I had dropped something heavy and it made no sound when it hit the ground. Then came the call. Not from David. From my old neighbor, Cynthia. "Did you move?" she asked. "Yes." "Oh. Well, Your son came by. He looked upset. Asked a lot of questions. I didn't know what to say. I thanked her, but all I could think about was how David still hadn't reached out directly. Not truly. Not with humility. Just confusion. Just offense that the system he benefited from had stopped running. Then the fury began. Leanne sent a barrage of messages. Not just emails. Voice memos. Long, clipped cold. You've embarrassed us. People are asking where you are. Do you want them to think you've lost your mind? David is heartbroken. He keeps saying, "What did I do so wrong? You abandoned your own son." Who does that? You're ruining everything. We were going to make plans for Christmas. You're just gone. Gone. That was the point. Then came the group text from David's cousin Beth. Someone I'd never been close with, but who always watched from the sidelines. I think what you did was cruel. Ghosting your family like that, it's selfish. People looked up to you. I stared at the message, feeling my pulse slow. So now I was cruel. Because I stopped giving. Because I stopped holding them all together while they chipped away at me. I didn't reply. But the flood didn't stop. David finally sent something real. You really cut us off. You cut me off. What did I do that was so unforgivable? I've always been your son. He had. But he had also been the one to smile while letting me disappear. I lit a candle. Not for them. For me. And I wrote again. This time, not a journal entry. A letter I wouldn't send. But one I needed to say. Dear David, I loved you more than I ever said aloud. More than I knew how to show sometimes. But I see now that love without respect becomes servitude. I was not made to be the quiet fixer of your life. You didn't lose me overnight. You lost me in pieces. When you didn't stand up for me. When you let her belittle me. When you stopped looking at me like I was someone you admired and started looking at me like a bank. I am not bitter. I am awake. And I will not be returning to sleep. Mom. I folded the letter. Placed it in a drawer. Next to my passport and my new favorite teacup. I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. They called it abandonment. I called it remembering myself. And I wasn't going back. But the most unexpected thing happened a week later. A letter. Not from David. Not from Leanne. From Leanne's sister. It arrived through the guest house's front desk. The envelope was pale blue and handwritten. Inside was a single sheet. I know we've never spoken. But I wanted to tell you I saw everything. The way they used you. The way you kept showing up. I'm sorry for my part in staying quiet. I read it 3 times. Someone else had seen it too. And that was enough to let me exhale for the first time in weeks. I stood by the window, looking out at the street below. My tea had gone cold, but I didn't mind. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I had been seen. And I was finally free. It's strange how quickly peace can feel like guilt, especially after a lifetime of serving others. Every morning, I sat by the window of my small rented apartment in Lisbon and waited for the guilt to go away. The sun would warm the tiled rooftops, casting gold across the walls. Locals would greet one another with gentle smiles. Life moved slowly here, like it had nothing to prove. But my mind still rushed. The first week, I kept checking my inbox, expecting more attacks. More shouts disguised as messages. But after that final barrage, they stopped. Their silence was louder than their fury had been. And I realized something. They weren't trying to reach me. They were trying to shame me into coming back. When I didn't, they lost interest. What replaced the guilt was clarity. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to rush through the morning or hold my breath waiting to be needed. No emergencies. No passive-aggressive reminders about birthdays, bank accounts, or brunches. Then came the unexpected. A message from a woman I'd known long ago, a retired nurse I used to volunteer with. She had come across an article in a local paper that mentioned I had moved here. I always remembered how calm you were during the hard days. I hope you found a place that treats you better. I held on to that sentence. It wasn't dramatic. But it was true. I had been calm. Steady. I had spent a lifetime being the one who made things better for everyone but myself. And now I had chosen something radical. Myself. One morning, I walked through the old Alfama district, winding past tiled houses and laundry fluttering on lines. A group of tourists passed, loud and eager. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I just kept walking. I realized something profound in that moment. I had stopped apologizing for existing. When the holiday season came, I waited for a card, a photo, a guilt-laced message. Instead, I got a group email, a mass message from Leanne, sent to the entire extended family. No mention of me, no address or acknowledgement that I was gone. I stared at it for a long time, then archived it without reading past the subject line. Then I did something I didn't expect from myself. I threw a small dinner party. Just a few neighbors. One of the ladies brought soup. Another brought wine. We laughed. Talked about nothing. And I didn't once worry if I was saying too much, giving too much, being too much. The next morning, I opened my old notebook, the one where I had once written every slight, every time I was made to feel small, and I ripped the pages out, one by one. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I just let them go. Because I no longer needed proof that I had been mistreated. I believed myself now. And then I received one last message. Not from David. Not from Leanne. From my granddaughter. Grandma, I don't know what happened, but I miss you. I hope you're happy. She was the only one who didn't accuse. Who didn't ask me to explain. And that's when I finally cried. Because someone, even just one person, wanted my happiness without asking for a piece of it. I wrote back simply, "Thank you, sweetheart. I am." I didn't say more. I didn't promise to come back. I knew that someday she might ask questions. And if she ever did, I'd be ready to answer with truth, but without bitterness. For now, I stayed. The ocean was nearby. The air smelled like oranges. I baked bread on Sundays. I bought flowers without thinking about who would criticize the expense. I laughed without worrying whether it was the right moment. I lived. And I knew deep in my bones that this was the life I had always deserved. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, like you only matter when you're useful, I want you to know something. You don't have to earn love by setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sometimes, love begins the moment you stop waiting for permission to exist. I realized age is not about weakness. It's about dignity.